Hello, everyone. My name is Grant Hardaway. I'm the librarian for the sciences here at Trinity. And today we're going to be talking about Zotero. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Zotero, it is a reference management software that essentially allows you to collect your sources and be able to implement them into your papers, either through Word or Google Docs, really fluidly and very simply. And I think you'll find it to be really useful, not only in this class, but in all your classes throughout your time in your undergrad and maybe even grad school. So if you look at the screen here, this is what Zotero's interface looks like. But first, let me show you how to download it if you haven't done that yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to our main library homepage at lib.trinity.edu, as you can see in the browser URL here. If you click on libguides and then search for Zotero, the first option that you'll see here is our citation management tools right here. So if you click on that, it'll give you a walkthrough of how to set up Zotero. And I'll link this in the description box under this video. And also keep in mind that I'll be timestamping every part of this video as well. So if you want to jump around to parts to rewatch something, all that information will be in the description box for this video. So to download, all you have to do is simply click on the download button. You'll also want to download Zotero connector. This is really important because it'll allow you to collect sources off of your browser. I do know that it doesn't necessarily work really well with Safari. So if you are only using Safari, I would recommend at the end of this video, I'll show you a quick trick on how to collect sources if you can only use Safari. But I generally use Google Chrome, and Zotero connector works perfectly with that. This also will allow you to have access to Zotero through Google Docs. So this would be really important to you. But once you have it downloaded, it should be on your desktop. And so you can open it like this. So this is the general interface of Zotero. I already have a lot of folders set up and papers set up with that. But if you're opening this for the first time, you probably won't see much outside of just this folder that says My Library. Let's go ahead and start a folder for this class. So if you go up to the top left-hand side here, it says New Collection. Go ahead and click on that. I'm going to put BioLab here. And now there's a folder for this lab. So whenever I'm collecting resources for maybe a lab report or a paper, I can sort them into this folder here. So now let's go and collect some sources. I'll first start with Google Scholar. If you're unfamiliar with Google Scholar, it essentially is just Google's version of an academic database. It spreads a really, really wide net. So you're getting a lot of different sources here, which is kind of a gift and a curse in that you get a lot of sources, but you also get so many sources that can kind of hard to deal with. But they do have a really nice search feature that is somewhat similar to Google's algorithm. So that works really well. I will note, if you are off campus, you will need to connect Google Scholar to the Coates library if you have not already done this. So if you go onto the left-hand side, click on Settings, then Library Links, then type in the Coates library. I've already got it added here, but if you type in the Coates library, it should show up in the results. Click on that and save. And now you'll get a link next to each of the articles, and it will say if we have access to that paper or not. So going back to Google Scholar, let's collect some sources. So I have a general topic that I want to study, but I'm not really sure how I want to search for it. So I'm going to walk you through a very, very simplified way of kind of narrowing down a search. So let's say, for instance, I'm interested in the effects of spider venom. If I just search spider venom here, I'm going to get about 31,000 results, which is quite a bit. But maybe I want to become more specific. So spider is really, really broad. So maybe I should limit this down to a type of spider. So I'm going to do the brown recluse. All right, and you see just by adding that title there, I've limited down my results to a lot smaller portion. And Also, in this case, you may want to, for instance, this is the technical name of the spider. You may want to add that in there too as an option. Searching can be kind of messy, so it's okay to add in a lot of different search features. And then let's say, for instance, I'm not just looking at brown recluse venom. I want to look at the effect of venom on humans. So I want to find human studies. And so I'll see quite a bit of results here, and it didn't limit it down too much, but still just adding and taking away, using different words to a search query can make that search that much better. But let's say this is appropriate for me. I'm finding just in this first page here a lot of results that I like. You'll notice one thing. If you look on the top right-hand corner of your browser here, if you download a Zotero connector, you'll see a folder. If you click on that, what this has done is it's taken all the sources that are on this page and has kind of indexed them. So if I wanted to add these to a folder, I would just have to select them. So let's say, for instance, I wanted this paper here. I would just select that paper and click OK. Then it automatically, since this is a new folder, automatically added it to BioLab, but I could choose one of my other folders as well. You click on more and select it that way, but I want it in my BioLab folder. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and you'll notice it says full text. So it actually was able to get the PDF directly, and it'll be added to Zotero. All right, so that has been added. If I go back to the Zotero, you'll see now in BioLab, I now have this paper. And because it got the abstract, or not the abstract, because it got the full paper, I can actually have access to it directly through my computer. All I have to do is if I double click on it, it'll open up the PDF automatically. And you can just read it that way. And if you're ever curious, you're wondering did you actually get the PDF whenever you selected that article using Zotero? One easy way to know is that if there's a little blue dot here under attachments, that means that it generally probably has some kind of file associated with it. But if you click on this drop-down box, you can see it has the full text, and this PDF could be listed as many different things. But you'll know you have it that way. Okay, but going back to Google Scholar, this probably wouldn't be the way that you would normally grab an article, because you need to look at the article and see if it's actually relevant to your interests. So for instance, let's see if I click on this article here, you can actually read the abstract first and make sure that it's actually of interest to you. So you could read through that first and then try and see if we have access to it. So for instance, in this case, I can click on e-resources at Trinity. I'll log in since I'm off campus. And then it'll show me a few options here and show me if I have access to an article or not. Okay, so you'll notice that there aren't any links under connect to this article. That means that we don't have direct access to it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have access to it at all. You'll notice under Browse Journal, it says it is accessible through ScienceDirect. So if that is the case, you can actually just contact me, and I'll have my contact information in the description box, and your professor will have it as well. And I can actually get this article for you. It's as simple as just emailing me, and I can get it for you. If you don't see a ScienceDirect option or a link under connect to this article, you'll then need to request it through interlibrary loan. And that can take up to 5 days. So just keep that in mind, depending upon when you need that paper. So you may want to look directly at the PDF first. So in this case, for this article over here, there's a direct access to a PDF link here. If you click on that, you can just look at the PDF right away. And you'll notice that now the Zotero link here is now for a PDF. So if you click on that, it'll save that to your BioLab folder. Now let's look over at Zotero and see what this ended up looking like. So this is the paper here. It's got the PDF associated with it, and it's got on the right-hand side all of the information for a citation. But there are some cases where you don't run into the PDF. Okay, so I'll work through an instance where maybe we don't have a PDF attached to it. So I scroll down here and I click on this paper. It seems interesting to me for my research. I'll go ahead and read the abstract here and say, okay, I'll make the assessment, and then I'll add it to Zotero using the Zotero connector button. You'll notice it actually will add the PDF full text automatically, just like before. But if I go back, let's say I actually I delete this PDF. Let's say in this situation, there was no PDF associated with this. If I double click on it, all it does is it takes me to the web page. Let me go ahead and download that paper then. All right, now that it's downloaded, all I have to do is I can show it in my downloads folder. And then let me open up Zotero again. All right, so this is the paper. I know that it's the paper. All I have to do is I just drag and drop it like you would into a folder into the Zotero. And so now, if you double click on it, it'll open up the paper. So once you get the PDF, say for instance, like I was talking about ScienceDirect earlier, if you request a PDF from me, you can actually have the entry ready using Zotero. And whenever I send you the PDF, you can just drag and drop that PDF into Zotero itself. But those are kind of the basic situations you're going to run into using Zotero and Google Scholar, and what you'll be doing whenever you work on your assignment later in the lab. So now let me show you how you can use Zotero using either Word or Google Docs. And I'll start with Google Docs. All right, so if you've downloaded Zotero connector, you should see a Zotero button within your options on Google Docs. If you're not seeing that, you may want to restart your browser because sometimes it may not show up right away. But let's say you're writing a lab report, you're writing a paper, and then you make a statement that you want to back up with some research. It's just as simple as clicking on Zotero and then clicking on Add Edit Citation. So what you'll need to do is you'll actually need to log into your Zotero account, which you'll make whenever you download Zotero. And you'll notice, so this is something that happens pretty frequently. It'll say Zotero is updating your document, please wait, and nothing is showing up. Go down and click on Zotero and you'll notice that there is actually a window hidden behind the browser, and it's right here. So there are a ton of different citation styles that you can use. So MLA, APA, animal behavior is one of them, Chicago style. Whatever your professor wants you to use, select that style. If you don't see the style that you want to use, click on Manage Styles, and you can actually download. They have a ton of different styles that you can download. I'm going to go ahead and choose APA. But you can choose whichever citation style that your professor prefers. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and click OK. Now it's going to ask me to search for which citation I want to add next to that statement. So you can search by title, you can search by author, you can really search by any element that is within that paper. I'm going to go ahead and search by title just because that's simpler for me. So I'm going to do the interaction, this one here. So I'm going to click on that, and you could add more sources if you would like. So for instance, maybe I would want one of the other Brown Recluse papers here. You could click on that, and now you see it has both of the papers here, and it actually alphabetizes them as well, which is the correct way. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this and just stick with this one. And then I press enter. Let it load for a minute. All right. And there we go. So now I have the citation next to it. And if I wanted to make another statement, I just do the same thing. Add edit citation. It's hidden behind the browser. Look it up. So Brown Recluse. Click enter. Let it load, and here we go. All right, so now let's say, all right, I want to make my bibliography now. So normally you would make it as a separate page, but for the sake of the example, it's really simple to do that. All you have to do is click on Zotero and then add edit bibliography and go ahead and click on it. All right, and now both of the sources were cited in the bibliography, and it's just automatic like that. And whenever you add a new citation within the paper, it'll automatically generate it in your bibliography as well. So it's a really nice, convenient way. Now, this isn't a perfect system. If you're familiar with APA, for instance, you'll notice there are some problems in this citation. So for instance, the title here in APA, only the first word of the title and then of the subtitle should be capitalized. So you'd actually want to go through here and correct this. And you can just do that manually. And so it always is a good rule of thumb to have your style guide ready so you can actually make sure that all your citations are correct. What Zotero does is it makes this process way, way simpler. Instead of copying and pasting and doing all of that, all you have to do is you click the button and then you double check to make sure it is correct with the citation style guide, and then you're good to go, which makes it really, really simple. So let me go ahead and show you an example. I'm going to do one more here. Click on Zotero, add edit citation. Let's do our last Brown recluse paper here. All right, so I added this paper here, and you'll notice that it is now here. So let's say, for instance, I no longer want to use a in-text citation anymore, but I'm worried that it's going to still be in my bibliography. It's really, really simple. All you have to do is just delete it here, just manually. Click on Zotero, and then click refresh. And then now the citation is gone for that. So it's very, very simple. If you do end up deleting all of your in-text citations and then clicking refresh, it's going to show you an error message because it's trying to show you a bibliography that isn't there. So keep that in mind. You need to have at least one in-text citation available before you click on refresh, but you probably won't run into that situation too much. But that is really simple run through of how to use Zotero on Google Docs. If for whatever reason you do want to change the citation style, once again, click on Zotero, click on document preferences, and it'll open this back up and you can change it to whatever you like. So even if you want to change mid-paper to a different style, you can do that by just clicking on the document preferences. All right, but let's show you how this looks on Word, and it's very similar on Word. If you've downloaded Zotero on your desktop, you should have Zotero showing up on Word. And this sometimes is a problem on some people's computers and sometimes it isn't. The good rule of thumb is restart Zotero, check Word again. If it's still not there, go to Zotero, click on Tools, click on Add-ons, and you'll notice it says, and this looks pretty similar on a Mac as well, but it'll say Zotero Word for Windows integration, and it'll say Mac if you're using a Mac. Just click on Disable, then make it able again, and then restart Zotero, and then restart Word, and then 9 times out of 10, that should fix it should show Zotero on Word after that point. If you're still running into problems, email me, and I can work through it, but hopefully you should still have it. But if you click on Zotero, it works essentially the same as it does on Google Docs. So if I make a statement 1 here, I click on Add Edit Citation. I choose the citation style, in this case APA. And then it asks me once again, what do I want? And then if I want to make my bibliography, and then add edit bibliography here. And these all work the same as they did on Google Docs. So if you want to add more, you click on that. If you want to change your citation style, you click on document preferences. If you want to delete a reference and have it be deleted off of your bibliography, click on refresh. it works essentially exactly the same as Google Docs. But you can probably already imagine how this makes the writing process that much easier. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about is organizing your research using Zotero. So you'll notice here, we just have 3 files here. This is a pretty simple, if this was all the sources we were getting for a paper, it's a really straightforward paper. But there are some situations where maybe you want to have more options. So you can actually create a new folder within a folder. So let's say you have 5 different papers for this bio lab and you want to have the resources sorted by each paper. If you right click on your folder, you can make a sub collection. And then let's say paper 1. So now you can add new articles to the paper 1 folder. So now if you wanted to add papers to this folder here, it's as simple as dragging and dropping. And it will seem like you aren't actually dragging and dropping it, but you are. So for instance, I just moved that one over here. And so now it's in both folders. So it's in both paper 1 and the biolab folder. So if you want to reuse papers in the same type, that's just one way to organize things. You can also add notes. So what this does is you can either add a standalone note, and for instance, as you're doing research, you may be collecting a lot of articles, but not really making many notes as to why you collected those articles, especially in that early phase. The notes feature will make this really simple. So for instance, say if you wanted to make a standalone note for a folder, say that these papers will be used in argument 1, for instance. And you could be a lot more explicit as to how you actually want to use these papers. And you'll find that to be really, really useful. Even more useful, though, is if you make notes for each individual paper. So if I click on this and you add a child note, you can add a note and then actually describe why this paper would be used, or this article would be used in your paper. And so this will be really, really helpful if you write a sentence or 2 or 3 right when you find an article. So when you go back and actually start writing that paper, you'll know, oh, this is why I thought this paper was interesting. Instead of going through the process of reading through the abstract all over again and trying to figure out why you thought this paper was interesting in the first place. This is a great way make the research process easier. And if you wanted to just say, for instance, you had a physical book or a physical paper that you couldn't find online, you can't get a citation for online, you actually can create citations within Zotero. So if you click on new item up here, you can actually select one. So say, for instance, you wanted a book or a journal article, for instance. Those are probably the 2 most ones that you would use. If you click on that, on the right-hand side, you can start adding a lot of information here. And then you can make it into a citation that way. And if you scan that book and you have a copy of that scan, you can now add that to your file here. Okay, so that is the main points I wanted to cover with Zotero. The last thing I do want to touch on is if you're using a Mac and you only use Safari, I'll show you how you can add sources if you don't have Zotero connector. But if you are just using a PC or if you're using Chrome, you can, in the video here, thank you. But if you are using a Mac and you are using Safari, this is what you'll need to do. So what you need to do is you need to find the DOI for a paper. So if I go back to my results here, and let's say I click on this paper that we had used earlier, you'll notice there's a DOI listed here. If I just take that and copy it, let's go to paper 1 here. And you click on this kind of magic wand. It'll ask for ISBNs, DOIs, any type of identifier. So ISBNs, if you have a book, you can actually generate a citation that way. If I go ahead and click on that, I'm pasting it in, pressing enter. It adds that paper automatically. It has all the information. But you'll notice that it didn't add the PDF here. So there's no file attached to this. So you'll want to do that drag and drop method to add it there. And so there is a couple more steps in there, but it is still a lot easier than creating your own citation. So yeah, that's if you're using Safari only. this is the best way to do that. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I'll have my contact information in the description box. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions, if you run into any problems. And thank you for your time. Bye.